Hello and welcome back on my channel. Thank you so much for joining me again for my first wrap-up of the month of March. Yes, I'm splitting my wrap-up into two parts because one part would just get way too long and, well, the editing process takes way too long and it just feels better this way. So bear with me in this one. For some reason, I have been not doing really well with recording my wrap-ups this first half of the month. Usually after reading the book, I sit down, give you my review, and then give you my sentence prediction. I am missing that footage for quite a lot of the wrap-ups, and I have missed discussing one wrap-up. So the book that I am missing the wrap-up for is a book that I've read in German, and I know that it is originally written in French, and I do not know if there is an English translation for it. I couldn't find one. It is by the same author that has also written The Braid, and the name would be translated into House of Women or The Palace for Women. In this book, we are following a woman who is like a star lawyer and is going through depression and burnout, and her therapist is advising her to do something socially engaging in terms of like a nonprofit support, help, something where she can potentially realize herself, or I don't know, just do some good, and that could potentially help her. So she turns to this house of women where women from all types of backgrounds who are in a more unlucky situation in life find a place to stay, like a safe haven. She is going there in the capacity of an official writer. And what I expected this to be is something that I know exists in nonprofit organizations, at least in the area that I live in, where people help it's immigrants, it's potentially people who are from a lower educational background, and the bureaucratic paperwork that sometimes is needed in a country oftentimes is even very confusing for people who are highly educated. So with her having a lawyer background, I expected for her to be supporting the women with this type of paperwork as an official writer capacity. And I was expecting to hear some dramatic, heart-touching stories of women and their pasts, and through that our main character miraculously finds herself. So this is kind of what I was expecting, and from seeing all the hype about the book The Braid, I was expecting amazing writing style and whatnot. Sadly, I can only end up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. I was massively disappointed by this book for various different reasons. First off, Solin, our main character, who is supposed to be like this star lawyer, comes across as naive, stupid, then super tough. She doesn't know who she is. I mean, yes, we know that she doesn't know who she is. That's why she's there as well. But there's no one character trait that there's no fluidity to a character development or why this person is suddenly changing the way that they act. So it just doesn't feel consistent, and it just felt like her reactions and the way that she's acting is more to fit the storyline and less about having one character. I had a bigger problem with the way that the stories of the women were told. So Celine ended up not writing bureaucratic letters or helping the women with that kind of thing. She ended up helping with stuff like asking the queen for an autograph or writing a letter to a son that the mother had to leave behind when she was fleeing the country to bring her daughter to safety. Very heart-touching story, and I enjoyed listening into this story, but it felt very shallow and superficial in a way that we quickly touched on that story and then moved on. And this whole thing under the image that she is writing the letter for her. And I just don't understand why this woman needs our protagonist to write this letter, because she can obviously read the letter that she writes. like she wrote it and then brought it to her, she reads it and then, oh yeah, that's fine. It's an emotional, very personal letter. I don't know if a woman who has to leave her young son behind would be able to leave that task of writing the letter to somebody else that doesn't even know the boy, not even understanding. I mean, potentially it's even the same language. We're just expecting it's the same language. I do not understand why she wrote these letters for these women, because none of them were illiterate. It wasn't a topic that they were, why they needed this. And it felt like it was just a tool for the women to go tell their story and find a way that these women could potentially use a letter and then move on to the next one. And the way that this was then done led to me being very frustrated, because I was the whole time like, why are we moving on to the next one? We didn't go deep enough into any story. So what happened was that instead of feeling compassionate, instead of being like touched by the story, I felt like I was getting a little bit numb, if you know what I mean. Then we have another timeline to the whole thing where we are following the woman, Blanche, who created this house for women. And I just had some issues with that storyline as well, where I was like, okay, I'm being told over and over how strong this woman is and how amazing this woman is. And it's a very, very big case of the author telling me what I see and not showing me what I see. And all the ways that she was so amazing because she was able to raise all that money. And I was like, how did she do it? Please show it to me how she does it, because all I'm seeing is right time, right place, luck, and yes, she is able to speak. So she can sell it a little bit, but I didn't see that she was grinding and doing everything to get there. To get the basic money, pretty much her husband went and got a loan. And that is not something where I can then say it's the woman's tenacity and her persistence that no, the man got a loan. So I don't know, it just all didn't fit and I was heavily disappointed. Maybe my expectations were too high, but I just did not like it. The first sentence is, everything happened really fast. And I expected 4 out of 5 stars. I was so wrong. So wrong. Breadgivers by Anja Jezierska. I am sorry for completely butchering your name. I read this for the Spilling Tea book club. The link is down in the description below. If you are looking for a nice book club with cool book picks with a focus on strong women in the 20th century, please consider joining. It is run by 2 wonderful guys. As I mentioned, it's in the description box, check it out. Breadgivers potentially was not my favorite book pick, but I did enjoy it. We're following this Jewish family that came to New York, and they are living on the brink of poverty in I believe this plays in the 1920s. I mean, this was written in 1925, so it is playing in the beginning of the 19th century, not 19th century, in the 20th century in New York. And we are following the struggles of this family trying to make a living, trying to navigate a father that is a little bit complicated. I think he's a rabbi, but he is preaching. His books are more important than food pretty much. And he treats his family quite crappy. He has a bunch of daughters and he pretty much expects them to work and prioritizes his reading the Torah over having bread on the table. The characters, navigating the characters was quite interesting. We're following mainly one daughter and her journey, and it's about getting married off. It's about finding your place and navigating this parent that is harsh and cruel, and you want to get away from them, but also somehow they still keep being your parent, you know. I'm at a loss for words right now for this one. I'm having a really hard time describing how I feel about it and why it is only giving 3 stars. What I liked about this book a lot was that I was able to get through this in 3 hours. I read this with the audiobook and you can just blast through it really quickly. So if I get through a book that quickly, I am much more forgiving when it comes to the writing style, but I have heard quite a lot of people talking about her writing not being the best, and I can see where they're coming from. I do enjoy the main character though, so that gives this an extra star for me, and I enjoyed some things around how the poverty thing was represented and everything. Although then again, I don't read a lot in that era. I don't read a lot with that background. And I have heard in the Zoom meeting that there is better stuff out there that has the same flair to it, that has the same setting, etc. So that's what I'm struggling with a little bit here, that I have no comparison what it feels like. This one is tough to rate and review because I feel like I'm not the best to review this one. I did enjoy it though, and I enjoyed following the characters, but I'm pretty sure that this will not be a book that I'm going to be remembering next year. So it is somehow forgettable. One thing that I enjoyed most about this is that the book is called Breadgivers in English, and it is such an important theme across the whole book, who is the person providing for the family, and how our main character, the daughter, or the daughters in general, are being put into the spot of having to be the breadwinners and everything. And that's so interesting that the title was translated into German as My Father, My Enemy, and that being a completely different theme in the book. And yeah. Anyways, 3 stars for this one, and I'm pretty sure that my next reads are going to be a lot more fun. But anyways, the Zoom discussion was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that a lot, so do consider joining the book club because it is great company, it's great book picks, and diversifying my read in a way, and that's what I enjoy a lot. The Breadgivers, the first sentence is: I had just begun to peel the potatoes for dinner when my oldest sister, Bessie, came in, her eyes far away and very tired. I predicted 3 out of 5 stars, and I potentially feel like the vibe that I got from this, I predicted right that I would consider this 3 out of 5 stars. Maybe tell me, next month, should I actually go with doing it this way, that I am after rating everything, that I am sorting my TBR according to the stars that I am predicting, and then I'm reading it from 5 to 1 stars. A Close and Common Orbit. This is the German cover, and I have listened to it on audiobook in English and read this with my eyes in German at the same time, and I love this. I love the Wayfarer series so much. This is so good. If you are enjoying science fiction and you haven't read it, go do it now. It has sort of a light-hearted, more of a not as dark touch as other science fiction that I've read, but what I love most about it is the way it makes you view things with new eyes, the way that it just questions everything in existence. If you have characters that are questioning everything in our society or in our beliefs that is so normal and standard for us, but it is not standard for them, and it just makes you reconsider the way that you view your world, then a book is succeeding. I love this way of thinking so much, and I try to find this way of thinking in my life, in my everyday life, just because I feel like it frees you up to understand things, situations, etc. more wholesome and fully, and be able to judge a situation more objectively. I know this is going way further than this book probably intends to, but I think that having the ability to think this way is tremendously important and great, and a lot of people aren't able to do it. This book makes you. In the first book, we had a lot of focus on meeting different species and how these species are different, and in this book we're narrowing down on 2 characters, and we are following 2 different timelines or geographic areas. It's not very clear in the beginning, and it feels a little bit more intimate than the first book because we are very intimately following these 2 characters, and it's a little bit less about species and different cultures, and it's a lot more about identity. It's a lot more about what we understand identity to be. Since one of the people you're following is an artificial intelligence that adds a lot more questions, but then the other is not also very simple. And I think I have repeated this example of the way of thinking now at least a gazillion times, but that really stood out to me is when this one character was struggling with the idea of how they can be a human, a child, and a girl, all 3 things at once. That's like mind-baffling to this creature, and I think this is the core of the way of thinking that I mean, that we don't even think twice about this, that it's absolutely normal and logical in our everyday life that you can be a human and a girl and a child, and this is not mutually, like, this is not exclusive, you know? And just challenging these very, very normal and logical limits of our world frees you up for thinking more broadly. Anyways, I love this. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars, and the series is just so amazing that I don't know what I have done without it and why I haven't read it sooner. And thank you, Interstellar Book Club, for making me read this finally. So the first sentence in here: Lovelace had been in a body for 28 minutes and it still felt every bit as wrong as it had the second she woke up inside. I predicted 5 out of 5 stars and I was right for this one. Then I also read Bishop's Honor, which I am reading together with Mel for my Free Book Friday series, and I am struggling with deciding what I want to give that. I'm potentially landing it at a 3 out of 5 stars. For the first half of the book, I was very strongly loving this, and I was like, finally a Free Book Friday book that deserves 4 stars. And then at one point it just went downhill and I didn't enjoy it as much. And if you want to know more, watch out for the episode for Bishop's Honor on Free Book Friday, which potentially might be released similarly at the same time as this wrap up. So watch out for it, and I am continuing to hope to find a 4-star free ebook. Fingers crossed. The first sentence in Bishop's Honor is: lying on her blanket-strewn queen-sized bed, the one she'd once shared with Roger, Maeve dreamed. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I honestly don't remember why. And if I had more time to edit, I would totally look up why. So apologize that I'm not doing that. But I feel like with a 4 out of 5 stars, in the first half, I was absolutely right. I got the vibe, I got the writing style. In the first half, this was dead on. And then just some of the shifts in the story and made the change. So I was potentially a little right. Cappuccino, Cupcakes, Corpse by Harper Lynn is a Cape Bay Cafe mystery that I read for my Free Book Friday series. I have buddy reading it and I'm actually looking forward to doing the full blown out review later today. So once more, make sure if you're interested in a little bit more in-depth review to subscribe and hit that notification bell to make sure you do not miss when I upload this. The book is an incredibly fast read. I was quite surprised that I had a reading pace that was twice as fast as usually. We're following a like, I feel like in a lot of cozy murder mysteries, we're following a person who came from a big city into a small town, and she is running the coffee shop. She has been growing up in this town, and now she's coming back after her mother died, and she's taking over the coffee shop, and well, there's a murder. She wants to solve it. Anyways, very typical setup. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I feel like the writing style was a little bit amateurish, so to speak, and I am quite sure that the author has been learning since then and everything. I think that it is a wonderful, cute murder mystery, and that for the right type of person, that this will be a really enjoyable read. I would say if you are the type of person who reads murder mysteries because you are trying to figure out who the killer is, that this might not necessarily be for you, because I feel like there was very little that you could follow along with and try, like, you followed along how the characters are trying to solve it, but the way you're following along the clues, you are able to predict some things, and some of them are quite obvious even, but I don't think that you would get the full enjoyment out of trying to guess who the killer is in this type of murder mystery. But aside from that, it was a really fun, quick read, and I did enjoy it. Now, the first sentence: I was bent over a cappuccino, carefully moving my milk pitcher to etch a design into the foam, when Mrs. D'Angelo burst into the cafe. And I predicted 3 stars, and I think I predicted this one right. I have a feeling that the way that I predicted it exactly mirrored my reading enjoyment in this one, so yay, I was right! Fledgling by Natasha Brown is the first in the Shapeshifter Chronicle, and I have read this for my Free Book Friday series as a buddy read, and I am giving it 3 out of 5 stars. If you want to see the in-depth review, please just hit the subscribe button and put on the notification bell so that you will be notified as soon as I will publish the Free Book Friday edition that includes Fledgling. Fledgling is following a girl that has some secret. She pretty much has an illness, and a boy who has a secret. We have a shapeshifter thing going on. I don't want to go into any spoilers. I actually also don't know what the synopsis is saying, so I don't know what would spoil you and what would not, because you might have read the synopsis. Anyways, this is a very typical paranormal fantasy book that I most likely would have enjoyed a lot as a teenager. The writing style is good enough, and it is filled to the brim with like tropes and cliches, but it's not done in a bad way, but also not in an original good way that would spark my adult interest. So I had to give it 3 out of 5 stars because I feel like the book objectively deserves it, and potentially even deserves 4 to 5 stars from the right target audience, but I just did not enjoy myself that much because I'm not the target audience. So this is always where I feel very conflicted about how I do the rating, because on one hand, this book might deserve more points and more stars, and on the other hand, my enjoyment does not reflect more stars. So what do you end up doing? And I'm settling on 3 stars because objectively it's not a bad book. It does have some flaws objectively, and even a teenager might enjoy something more original or something a little bit less cliche over this. I don't know, potentially, but it's not a bad book. So the first sentence was: sterile white walls surrounded Anna once again, and I predicted 3.5 stars. I think I went a little bit over. I would have never suspected paranormal fantasy from this. Probably more like dystopian, post-apocalyptic, sci-fi or something, because the sterile white walls just sound more like that. So anyways, I was wrong, and I am happy that I'm done, but I'm also really looking forward to the discussion, because even though it's only a 3 out of 5 star book, I do believe that the discussion about it will be a lot of fun, and you should definitely make sure that you check that out, because I'm sure that you will also have fun watching it. And another one in the bags tonight. I've been trying to catch up after a couple of days of not reading, or just like reading a little bit and pushing it out, and now I am just finishing them one after the other. The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakavic is following a young man who is in school, has a dark secret, a dark past, and is playing a made-up game of sports, and is being offered something like a scholarship to play in a pretty much like professional like team. And he needs to decide if he wants to go or not, because, well, there's somebody who knows him, and he might know him, and he might recognize him, and he doesn't want to reveal his past and doesn't want to be recognized. So yeah, a lot of drama. I ended up only giving it 2 out of 5 stars. I also read this for my Free Book Friday format, so you can get a little bit more of an in-depth review in that specific video. So keep an eye out for that one if you're interested for it. And I think that might be a very interesting discussion, because I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and the person that I'm buddy reading it with gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So I'm very, very excited for filming our little discussion here. That's going to be really interesting. I have a hard time explaining in a short few words why it just felt wrong. There was just so much that felt off with this book, and it wasn't in a way that it was with Fledgling, where I was like, okay, this is technically a good book or not a bad book, but I'm just not feeling it. I might not be the target audience. In here, it felt like it was objectively not well done, and it was just dragging. And yes, it was fast-paced in a way, but then also it was dragging in another way, because the things that happened fast-paced, I could not connect with at all. They just bored me so much. Like, I couldn't grasp any character. There was no relationship between me and the characters. There was no character that I was rooting for or rooting against or had any emotion about whatsoever. And so, I don't know, I was like, no. As I said, I will go more in depth about what my issues were in that video. So the first sentence was, Neil Justin let his cigarette burn to the filter without taking a drag. And I predicted a 3.5 star, and that is not the case. I was completely wrong. After finishing that, I am now hoping that I'm going to have a streak of amazing, good books. The books that I have lined up to read this weekend before my cutoff for the first half of the wrap up are some of my most anticipated books for this month. Yeah, I have 31 books on my TBR for a month, so I feel like I can speak about most anticipated books. Oh wow, I forgot to do the wrap up yesterday, because I finished 2 books during the live, and I finished 1 book right before the live, and I don't think I have done a wrap up for any of them. So first of all, I finished Red Sister, and Red Sister is one of my new favorites. I love it, but I'm also a sucker for a fantasy school setting. So I'm a lot more forgiving when it comes to a fantasy school setting. And that is why it potentially got the 5 out of 5 stars, because of a lot of this was playing within an assassin school. I enjoyed very much so the play with chosen one, not chosen one, where it wasn't very straightforward. When you're going into a fantasy like this, you very immediately are like, ooh, this person is going to be the chosen one, and then it's straightforward because they are the chosen one, and then everything's perfect in their life, and then they have struggles because they are the chosen one. But in this case, it's more of our main character that we're following is not the chosen one, but like a support for the chosen one, and I do like that kind of thing. We had a few additional layers where the whole chosen one trope was kind of challenged in a way and changed, and it wasn't as straightforward as in other books. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that our main character is not very straightforward and might be lying, has huge character development. I enjoyed the writing style a lot. I understand that each of these things that I enjoy a lot might not be for everyone though. So far that I've seen a few people rating this not as good as I do tend to not like these specific aspects in a book that I adore. I fully understand that this might not be a 5-star for everyone. I fully understand where the limitations of this are. That doesn't take away from me loving it a lot. One thing that I was struggling a little bit in the early stages of the book was that there was a lot of character names that I felt were a little bit confusing. The sisters all have inanimate objects as, well, not all of them, one is an owl, as a character name, and for some reason I had a hard time telling them apart, and my buddy Reed did as well, so it potentially wasn't just me. But I did enjoy the world building. I think for some people this would be heavily grimdark. For me it's leaning on grimdark. It is kind of brutal in some ways, and in other ways it's not. And yeah, it's grimdark, I guess. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm looking forward to continuing in the series. It is important when killing a nun to ensure that you bring an army of sufficient size. I expected to have 4.5 stars on this one, and it was better than I thought. But I think that the way that this first sentence is written is beautiful, and we had this type of sentence throughout the whole book, and I enjoyed that a lot. It was just a little bit better than predicted, but I think overall I got the vibe down. Then I finished Mind of My Mind, which is part of one of my new favorite series as well. So very good reading day this weekend. Well, reading weekend. Mind of My Mind is the second in the Pattern Master series, and we're pretty much following an immortal being trying to create their own race, trying to create their own society by breeding superhumans or like immortal beings or like his children in a way. So the main character is, he's not a shapeshifter, he is an entity who was born as a black man, but as he went along he was immortal, but his body is not immortal, so what he needs to do is pretty much kill somebody and then take their body. And he has been all races, all appearances, everything. And yeah, I think he actually considers himself a parasite, which he is. And yeah, I just love that this has conversations about so many different topics, and I love the way that this is written. I love the writing style. I love the world, which is super easy to get into because it just it's playing in our world and just has a few layers onto it. And the character development is so strong in my opinion, and I just adore this book. I adored the first one. I adored the cover as well. I just love the look of the series, and I can't wait to continue on. I'm continuing on with Clay's arc this week. So I'm trying to catch up to the Octavia E. Butler slow read along because I want to discuss these books with them in time and not always play catch up. Dora's widow in the Southern California city of ... had become a prostitute, and I expected 4.5 stars, and it was also a 5-star read. So I predicted it a little bit lower than it would be. And then the third book I finished yesterday is The Interstellar Slayer. The Interstellar Slayer is probably more of a novella. I think it states 130 pages, but I was reading it so slowly in the beginning. It's more of like a 4-hour read than a 2-hour read, which I expected a 2-hour read. The Interstellar Slayer is a true science fiction fantasy. It has magic, it has swords and weapons, it has a lot of sword and sorcery elements, it has races and species and an elaborate world, and then it has space travel and technology and a lot of these aspects as well. So I don't know. Then we have politics. We have a secret order of assassins that are trying to influence the overall world politics, and these assassins are creatures that can also, after killing somebody, take their form, and they are like super deadly, super hard to catch, and we're following one of these assassins on a mission, and I loved it, but I'm only giving it 4 out of 5 stars because I felt like the world building was a tiny bit too complex for 130 pages. We were introduced to way too much, way too fast, and I'm thinking that this is why I had such a hard time reading this, and I was so super slow reading this because it was a lot to take in and a lot to understand. I would have preferred being eased into the world a little bit more, because I at one point was like, is this now a character name or a planet name or a race name? I don't know what we're talking about anymore, because it's all sounded similar in a way and different as well. It was just too much for me. The entirety of Emic Rostel's compound was in a state of panic, and I predicted 4 out of 5 stars, and I was dead on. I think that I got the vibe that we got throughout the whole friggin' book. So these were the 10 books that I read in the first half of March. Just thinking about it is a little bit crazy. Fingers crossed that my second half of March is going just as well, maybe even better. Help me like by crossing your fingers for me. Anyways, if you liked this little video, please give it a thumbs up. Please leave a comment here. I just adore each and every comment, and it gives me so much joy. And I hope to see you again on my channel real soon. Until then, bye.
Just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever?